Greetings and welcome, everybody. My name is Chuck Palm. Welcome to the Top Tech Podcast, where we talk all the top tech without all the techno-babble. And joining me today is a special guest. I say that a lot, but this time I really mean it. Bernie Borges is one of my oldest podcast partners from way back in the day. In fact, I found one from almost 15 years ago with our names on it. And that means we were podcasting before there were video podcasts. It is absolutely my honor to introduce Bernie Borges, Midlife Fulfilled Podcast host, Vice President of Global Content Marketing at iCore, the Find and Convert host of the podcast that kind of launched us both into this wacky world, and the author of Marketing 2.0 that you can still find on Amazon. And I have to say, Bernie, welcome to the show, brother.
Chuck, thank you so much. It is awesome to be here. It feels like we're going in the Wayback Machine, and I know we're going to have a lot of fun.
So I'm going to jump right into blue suede shoes. You knew it was coming.
That's a private joke. We're going to have to tell people what we mean by it.
So real quick, one of our first podcasts, we were talking about how to find and convert customers. And specifically, what about marketing with images? How do people find images in Google? And I remember very specifically, you said something about how would I find, say, blue suede shoes? Knowing that I was an Elvis fan, he kind of played on that. So I searched blue suede shoes just in Google Images, and we discovered image tagging, right? So we played that for 6, 7 episodes at least. We really told people, you know, every time something happened, oh, that goes back right to blue suede shoes and how we got there. Ironically, about a year after you and I went our separate ways and did our things, I'm called to a meeting at a Chamber of Commerce to talk about podcasting. One of the guys chimes in. He says, you know, I really love these two guys. They talk about podcasting and marketing, and it's all about, you know, and they bring up blue suede shoes all the time. And I said, you're yanking my chain, right? This isn't real. No, I promise you, it's my favorite podcast. And it had been almost a year. And this guy was talking about our show. And I was just so impressed that we had that kind of reach, even if it was just North Tampa Bay, right? But it came around the world to come to him, right? It's been a year and he's still listening to those episodes. That was really cool.
Yeah. Well, I always say that I've had 3 podcast shows plus the one that I host for my employer. So that's not my podcast show,
sure,
but I hosted for iCore, as you mentioned. But I've had 3 shows, and the first one was with you. And I always say, Chuck, we went 49 episodes.
That's amazing.
And we bantered back and forth about a variety of digital marketing topics. And I always say that we kind of did it for ourselves because we just had a blast doing it.
It always is fun to be with you. We bumped into each other. Well, I kind of knew you were going to be there because your name was on the list of presenters at the CEX event in Cleveland a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
And this guy sneaks up behind me with that distinctive voice and says, you know how many years it's been since we've been up? And I just I said, I don't even have to turn around. No, that's Bernie Borges. You know. We had a great time, though, and there was a super conference. I really enjoyed all the presentations. Yeah. They were good people all the way around. But, you know, there were a lot of topics that came up that are right in my hall. You know, they're right in my shooting hall. And I got to say, I spent a lot of time talking about AI, and I'm not an expert by any stretch. I've played around with, you know, a few of the different flavors that are out there. But I noticed you had a conversation about something, an article that I believe a lady had posted about AI and healthcare and how it was going to change your future older self using AI. Can you break into that for just a quick minute?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was episode 78 on my Midlife Fulfilled podcast. I interviewed a woman by the name of Ines O'Donovan. She's a PhD and she's based over, I think, in Germany, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And she's a futurist. And awesome. So she enlightened me to the kinds of possibilities that we're in for over the next few years / decades. So we had this conversation, Chuck, around like what our day could look like when we wake up in the morning in the year 2050.
Wow.
By the way, I would be 92 in the year 2050.
Oh, that's
And I should say will be.
Yeah,
will be
right.
92. Right.
Because we're going to be heads in jars when 200 years old. I know. You know?
So one of the things that we discussed is that, you and I waking up, let's stay with the year 2050 for conversation's sake. We might actually have the ability to make ourselves biologically younger through AI. So what that means is, chronologically, we are the age we are chronologically.
Yes.
But through the advancement of health technology and AI, we can have the ability to say, I want to be biologically 38 years old. That sort of thing.
Yeah, the name escapes me now, but I know he's a big executive of one of the high tech companies, and he's actually working on that with doctors and technology, and he's reversing his age every year, and he goes through rigorous tests and wearing all kinds of different monitors. And I got to tell you, it's a fascinating topic.
It is fascinating, and I certainly like the sound of that because I felt like I was in the best shape of my life in my mid-30s. So I would go back to that in a heartbeat. So we wake up in the year 2050, and overnight our bed was monitoring all kinds of things about us, and even changing the makeup of the bed overnight just to make sure that we had optimal sleep. And if we had any aches or whatever, the bed was basically smart enough to sort of respond to us during the sleep process, right? And then when we wake up, presumably we should feel pretty energized because of what the bed was able to do for us in that overnight sleep using AI. And of course, like we all do, Chuck, the very first thing we do when we get up is we go to the bathroom. And so when we use the bathroom, the toilet is smart, and it's going to be able to analyze whether or not we're missing any nutrients, and it's going to communicate that to the smart kitchen.
Sure.
So that information makes its way to the kitchen. So maybe I'm in need of some additional vitamin B or whatever. I'm making that up just as a hypothetical scenario, right? Well, once I physically get up from the toilet, I'm going to walk over to the sink, or I'm going to, brush my teeth and shave and do all those things. And I'm standing on a mat. Well, that mat is smart. And that mat is able to analyze my physiology, my posture.
Sure.
My tension levels, or how relaxed am I? How tense am I? Right.
Yeah.
And then likewise, the mirror that I'm looking at is also smart, and it is also analyzing me, from the standpoint of some physiology.
He's pointing out the extra gray hairs in there, when you shave.
Yeah, exactly.
Just what I need is another critic. Yeah,
Like me, hair growing out of my ear.
What's that all about? Right? When did that happen? Oh, yeah.
Right.
I'm with you.
And then here's the one that's really mind-blowing. As if that alone isn't mind-blowing, Chuck, we're going to have emotional biomarkers.
Wow.
When we think of biomarkers now, we think of our physiology, and those are generally available through our saliva and then what we excrete in the bathroom. But we're going to have emotional biomarkers that this technology is going to be able to pick up on. Our mood, what we're thinking about, what we're worried about, what we're planning for, what we're afraid of, what we're excited about. And then if that alone isn't mind-blowing, we're going to have the ability to share with loved ones, close friends, whoever we choose, certain aspects about those emotional biomarkers. So if you choose to share your emotional biomarkers with me, then I would know that you're excited about going to the Creator Economy Expo.
Right.
That would be an emotional biomarker that I would know if you selected or elected to share that with me, right? Or with, close friends, your spouse, your kids, sharing emotional biomarkers both way, mine, and also being able to, be in the know of what my kids or grandkids' emotional biomarkers are.
Yeah. So I got a quick question there, because you mentioned something that I keyed in on right away, and that was you elected to share that information,
right?
Which obviously goes to privacy. Are we really afraid of, how much we're sharing? I mean, right now, personally, at my age, I think people overshare on social media a lot of things that I really don't need to know about them. That being said, what about emergency services? If I'm having a heart issue, or other kinds of AIs that monitor bodily functions, we have to elect to share that information online. Are you concerned that could be hacked or other people might use that for malicious reasons?
Well, of course, I think all of that is potentially fair game for security risk. There's no question about it. I think, the picture that I'm painting and the reason that I invited Ines onto my Midlife Fulfilled podcast is to really address the health issue one of the ways that we can be thinking about our health. In the context of that conversation with Ines, it was about the future and health technology, right? So back to your question, though, absolutely, there's going to be all kinds of security risks. And that's why these technologies probably can be developed faster than security risks can be nullified. You know what I mean? Like that technology is probably not decades away, but maybe just a few years away. But
I can interject one real quick that my father's diabetic and he wears a monitor that is able to send information to his phone about his blood sugar at all times of the day. He doesn't have to do finger sticks 5 times a day to find out. So he knows not only if he ate something that was, too high in sugar or carbs, but his doctor knows that too, because she's tied into that database and that information is uploaded daily. So, we're seeing that already in some degree, but it's all voluntary. You have to, sign off your life and say, I'm going to let you, peek under the hood here and take a look at all that stuff.
Yeah. So there's one other that I want to share with you, at least one other that I discussed with Ines on episode 78. And that is, I mentioned that we can elect to share emotional biomarkers.
Right, yeah.
We can also we will be able to elect to share our thoughts.
No.
Okay. So, but here's how I think it can and probably should work.
Okay.
And that is, we'll be able to sort of put a fence around it. Yeah. So let's say you're in a conversation. Let's say we're doing something like this.
Sure.
We're doing a podcast recording, tech talk show, right? And we're going to talk about AI. So I elect to share my thoughts just around that and nothing else.
Yeah.
Right. And so the idea is, or the concept behind that is that if you're in a group setting, particularly in a work setting, right, you can elect to share thoughts that pertain to the project at hand, the topics at hand, so that you're not dependent on someone speaking up or writing it out or just verbalizing a thought, but
little thought balloons that pop up over your head with the writing in there like a cartoon.
Yeah. And maybe we can even get a sort of advanced notice on it's, like maybe we have to like approve them, before they can go out, that kind of thing.
I like that idea a little better. Yeah.
Right. So the point is that it's almost inconceivable what the possibilities are, but because people like you and a little bit like me, I don't consider myself, a tech nerd or a tech expert by any means, but I certainly have embraced technology,
you sure have. Yeah, absolutely.
A whole lot. But so we can imagine a lot, and even if we start imagining and then start doing a little bit of Google searching or a little bit of, prompting on certain AI tools.
Yeah, right.
To some extent, some of this technology, like you said, you shared with, your dad and his heart monitor, some of this technology is either in development or even to some extent even available, even if it's in a limited supply.
Sure. Yeah.
It's just a lot of things that have to get worked out. And you hit on a big one, Chuck, and that's security.
Yeah. So security always comes up whenever I talk to anybody about AI. I actually went to school to become a network engineer. So, the wire stuff, the computer stuff, I'm your class A nerd. I can tell you a lot about the internet and how it was birthed out and so forth. All of that aside, whatever the connection is, whatever there are certain points where I call out tech fails. I think cellular technology is still a tech fail. It's done amazing things. Don't get me wrong. 20 years ago when I was beta testing the first smartphones, we did not have an internet connection to download email, let alone all the websites and video streaming and yada, yada. However, we were promised that about 2 years ago with 5G. And I that's my number one tech fail on top of the list. because it did not deliver as promised. Now we're seeing AI kind of busting into the scene a lot earlier than most people expected. Even Google is kind of behind the eight ball on this. They did not want to release as much as they have already. So I'm setting that stage to deliver this. We've got a lot of people out there that are getting a lot of bad information that are scared to death of the next version of AI. That's going to be the one, the Terminator that comes back from the future to kill us all. I've never been that guy. I'm more of a futurist. I love Dr. Michio Kaku's take on how technology is supposed to grow with biology and how humans will evolve through technology. But I do see that there are people pushing the envelope. There's actually, what do they call it? Chaos GPT, where they're purposefully building an AI to try to discover ways that robots will kill us. I didn't think that was a thing, but there are people researching that. Now, what are they going to use that information for? Is that to prevent the ethics and questions and morals issue in technology? The White House has been addressing that. There's actually the president of ChatGPT testifying before Congress this week.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the future of AI as it goes more from generative to general intelligence, or even what they're afraid of, super intelligence?
Well, if you don't mind, I think I'd rather either answer a different question or take your question in a slightly different direction.
I'll let you take it how you like it. That's fine. We don't have to, stick to any script.
Well, for two reasons, Chuck. One is there's something that I think has a lot of potential that I'm excited about that I want to talk about. Okay. And I want to get your perspective on it because I am not an expert, but I think it's a good conversation. And the other is I don't feel like, to my whole point of like, I'm not an expert, I don't feel like I'm really qualified to really answer your question as directly as you asked it. Okay. Because I think there's so much that has to get, peeled back on that onion.
Yeah.
I mean, there are governments that could really, try to take this in a nefarious direction.
Yeah.
There's a lot of potential for things to be done in a way that's harmful to society.
Sure.
And of course, that is true of so much of technology. That's true of weaponry, military weaponry,
Absolutely.
right? That's why, things like NATO exist and so forth. But anyway, what I'm excited about is the potential for large language models to be customized to organizations.
Right.
So that a company, I think today it's mostly big companies, but over time, I think all size companies will have the ability to take all the information that they have within their company, within their ecosystem, whatever that looks like for them, put it into a large language model platform, right?
Yep.
An LLM is what it's called, right?
Right.
And then be able to, bolt on AI potential in front of it, and then now what they have, instead of ChatGPT, they have their company name GPT.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That is being developed. You're absolutely right. That's I think the next version of the large language models. Very, very astute.
Yeah. And so I think that has a ton of potential. And look, it is going to create a lot of disruption. Mm-hmm. It is very likely to disrupt or eliminate many jobs, but it's also very likely to reshape a lot of what commerce looks like, a lot of what business processes look like, and create new jobs and create and require a new set of skills that I think are just sort of the evolution of skills that we have today.
I agree. And I have young people ask me, if I were to get involved in technology today, what should I do? And I said, honestly, be the guy that knows how to fix the robots, whatever that means, right? Be the one person that understands the technology well enough that you can go in there and be useful. When you're a content creator, or an author or blogger or whatever, you have input and output, and that input comes from the world around you. Even outside the online world, you're going to be able to publish information. I mean, that's really where Web 2.0 was, the king. We started talking early days, 20 years ago, when you and I were doing this, that Web 1.0 was read-only. Web 2.0 was we can publish now. We're able to contribute, right? Web 3.0 is about owning things online, ownership of data, ownership of content. AI is disruptive in that regard, but what surprised me the most at the conference that we just came back from, most of the people, the experts, all the way down to the amateurs who have just touched it, have all said without fail, yeah, it doesn't really scare me that much for my job. I kind of know what I know, and I know what I'm capable of doing. In fact, we're using it to make our jobs a little easier and to, get access to those kinds of tools. It's pretty fascinating. We didn't have a lot of naysayers or scaredy cats or science fiction guys coming down and saying, nope, Terminator's on his way,
Yeah. I think, Chuck, we don't know what we don't know.
Very true.
And I'm reluctant to be on either side of it's here, it's going to destroy us, or I'm not worried about it. I think those are two very two-sided extremes.
Yep.
So
right.
I'm not willing to say it's going to destroy us, or I'm not worried about it. I do think in the short term, and I don't even know how to define short term, whether it's years or weeks or days or hours.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But I think in the short term, I think creativity is something that cannot be replaced by humans.
Agreed.
How would AI replace what you and I are doing right now? The two of us are human beings having a conversation.
A CNN reporter tried that. She created her digital clone and gave it data and said, okay, let's debate. And it was so obvious that the AI was just falling down all over the place. It could not hold up against an interactive conversation. But more importantly, it doesn't think. It really kind of just parrots still at this point, right?
Right, exactly. But again, we don't know what we don't know, because
we don't know what we don't know.
What's possible in the next, year, 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever. Yep. But think of this, right? Here's, a smartphone. You and I are old enough to recall our life before this little device existed.
Or a smartwatch.
Or a smartwatch, right? So we remember life without those. Well, today we have a life where we do not own a personal robot in our homes.
Right.
But there's going to come a day where every home, just like we all have a smartphone, every home is going to have a little robot.
I beg to differ. My robot paged me this morning that the dustbin was full. I had to go empty it so that it could continue vacuuming.
That's a different kind of robot. That's a different kind of robot.
I love that idea, though. I really do.
I'm talking about the robot that I can just go call by name.
Right. Yeah.
And say, go fetch me a cup of coffee, or go, put the meal on. I want to eat at 7 p.m.
Yep.
And I want it laid out on the table.
And here's my recipe that I like. Don't use that other one that you found. Use mine.
Exactly.
All that is absolutely eminently possible. And I think a short step away. Like you said, weeks, months, years. It's coming. I've seen how the Palm E from Google AI was integrated into a service robot with a single arm that was performing tasks miraculously and doing it well. The problem was it was taking 20 minutes to clean up a soda spill, right?
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet, but that is so close with AI injected into automobiles. Now they're pulling that back and saying, hey, we really can't have these things driving autonomously yet until we work out more bugs. All of it is coming and at warp speed. And I think, it's time to figure out what side of that fence you want to be on. Whenever we fear things, we don't have a conversation about it. We tend to, block out any new information. And this is what this show has always been about for me, is kind of making those mysterious things a little more understandable.
Yeah, well, it's a journey, Chuck, right? Because we're learning each and every day. I just want to see continued progress that can impact our daily lives today, tomorrow, next week, next month.
Right.
I'll give you an example. I still do the editing for my podcast.
Oh my gosh. I gave that up. I'm sorry. I have to admit, I don't like doing it anymore.
Yeah. I'll probably get there, but I still do it. And I use Adobe Audition.
I do too. Yeah.
And as big as Adobe is as a company, I'm just waiting for them to send me a little notice saying, hey, good news. Next time you open Audition and you have a piece of audio in there, it's going to tell you and point out, all the little spots where the ums and the uhs are and where there's a little bit of a, bleep that bleep. I don't mean a cuss word. I mean like a little, like a noise,
a hiccup.
Like just built-in intelligence that tells me where they are and then gives me the option.
Yeah.
Give me in other words, cut my editing by 80%.
Hallelujah. I'm so with you on that. I mean, as much as I love my editor, shout out to the guys that are handling this video and doing all that for me. They're much better at it than I am. And I've actually edited National Geographic television shows. I'm not kidding. It is not something I enjoy doing anymore because I think you get burned out. But AI is coming to those features. I just did a report about Google AI and the new suite of services that they're packing into Google Docs and Google Cloud for free. This is going to be able to do a lot of that. I open up Google Docs. It's asking me, do you want help writing this? Holy cats. What am I going to do now? I want help writing this. But when I'm done, I want you to edit it so I don't have to send it to an editor and then publish my book, right? That's the kind of thing I think will make our lives better and free up more time, in my estimation, for humans to really get creative and artistic and express those things that only we do so well. There's emulators, there's certain programs that can fake it, but again, they're parrots. They're not quite thinking, they're learning. What are they learning and how are they learning it? I think those are ethical questions that we'll have to touch on another time.
Yeah, exactly. So short term, again, I don't know how to define short term, Chuck, but I'll leave it at that. Short term, I think the two areas that we really need to be thinking about that AI is not going to disrupt short term.
Right.
Is creativity, being creative, and strategy.
Yeah, so
okay.
True.
I still think we need our intellect and our emotions to theorize, to define problems, to understand problems, to do the research behind them. Of course, we can use AI to help us with that.
Yeah, right. Why not?
but ultimately to develop strategy. Right.
Strategy is the key to making all of this work. You're absolutely right. Well, Bernie, I don't want to cut you short here, man. I'll give you the last word if you have anything else you want to add to this.
As I've said here, I am not an AI expert by any means. I am an enthusiast. I've embraced technology for decades. I'll continue to embrace technology until the day that I die. I'm an optimist, and I just want to continue to produce good content, podcast content on my Midlife Fulfilled podcast, where I invite people in midlife seasons to just get inspired around ways that they can have fulfillment in 5 areas of their life: career, health, fitness, relationships, and legacy. And I'll embrace both technology as well as we said, strategy and creativity. Right on. Chuck, I just want to thank you for having me, because I always enjoy talking to you, whether it's across a microphone or in person at an event like we did recently.
I am honored, Bernie. It is really a thrill to have you back on the show. When we converse like this, there seems to be a natural flow, and that goes back so many years. Thank you for your time. You've been wonderful. I really appreciate all this, and I hope we can do it again real soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Chuck.
You bet. Ladies and gentlemen, Bernie Borges. You can find links to his show here and I'm going to put his LinkedIn profile, if that's all right. He shares great stuff on LinkedIn every day. And if there's any kind of questions or whatnot, you can contact him through there. But we want to thank you for tuning in as always. I'm Chuck Palm. We'll see you again soon.